welcome to episode 45 of the Tales of Sigmar podcast. As always, I'm your host Chalmers, and I'm not joined by Martin this week. Instead, we've got a special guest, and we're going to jump straight across to that interview, and it's with Nathan Watson. And I'm joined by Nathan Watson, who is 1/4 or 1/5 of the Northern Invasion podcast. You seem to be kind of multiplying.
Yep, 1/5 now. JP's joined us. Yep.
There you go. So, he's part of the Northern Invasion podcast that kind of covers a lot of the Scottish scene as well. But good evening, Nathan. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for having me. Been a long time listener.
Thank you very much. It's always lovely to hear when we've got actual listeners. No, it is nice to hear when people say that they've been listening for ages, because sometimes we've kind of talked about in the past, sometimes when you feel like you do a podcast, and you'll probably be the same way, you kind of do it and you're like, do many people actually listen or not?
Exactly, yeah.
It is nice to have you on. So Nathan is a part of the Scottish Six Nations team. He was also the 2018 Northern Master, so he knows his AoS quite well. And in this episode, if the title hasn't given it away, we're going to be talking about Belakor and his friends, and the Legion of the Chaos Ascendant and the Legion of the First Prince abilities. We're going to be talking about kind of what makes them good, what are the counters against them, and also kind of are they going to be viable going forward, bearing in mind it's a bit of a niche allegiance almost. So firstly, Nathan, for people who might not be aware, Legion of the Chaos Ascendant, where is that allegiance?
Right, okay, yeah, so Legion of Chaos Ascendant is in the Wrath of the Everchosen book that came out before lockdown. I think it was January or February 2020. Might have even been earlier than that. I can't remember the exact date, but that's where that allegiance comes from. But it has been replaced now with Legion of the First Prince in the Broken Realms Belakor book.
So the Wrath of the Everchosen book, it was a bit of a left field release almost. It was almost like a patch onto Slaves to Darkness almost.
Now that we've seen Broken Realms, I'm more of the opinion it was maybe a test bed for things to come.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was like their initial idea for, like, I know that they'd done these campaign books before, early, before Age of Sigmar even got points and stuff. They were huge as well. They were massive things. I remember seeing them in the Games Workshop stores. But they never actually did rules on this scale. I suppose rules on this scale never existed in the first edition of the game, but it definitely seems like you can see a lot of these Broken Realms books in the Wrath of the Everchosen stuff that they tried. So
it's kind of like it's not an add-on. Well, I suppose it is an add-on, but
yeah, I suppose
it's kind of those extra kind of additions.
Microtransaction.
Yeah. I didn't want to kind of put it in the bluntest of terms, but it kind of is, because it is kind of patching over certain armies and giving them extra bits.
Definitely.
Ideneth, for example, like mount traits, is something that, rather than just having to release a new battle tome, which I expect they probably will get a battle tome at some point, it just kind of gives them something different for the time being. And I'm just starting my Sylvaneth army, and I'm looking forward to Kragnos, because apparently Sylvaneth's getting a bit of a kind of rules change in there, and Lariel's getting a new warscroll, so they're nice. I suppose the first question is, do you feel it's just a bit of extra bloat, though, because it's another book that you've got to kind of get?
Yeah, I kind of come down in the middle of it, because I think that if we'd had a normal year, I think that a lot of people would have had a more favourable opinion of it. I don't think there would be as much of a negative reception. Like, we're coming to the end of Age of Sigmar 2, the vast majority of armies had already had battle tomes. Some of them had battle tomes for 2+ years at that time and hadn't had any refresh. Like, for example, Nurgle, they didn't even get an Age of Sigmar 2 battle tome. Theirs was the end of Age of Sigmar 1, and the only updates they've had is to a couple of war scrolls from both Wrath of the Everchosen and the Broken Realms book. So I think it is good to keep the game fresh, but I can see why people just have a more negative opinion of it when they're not even getting a chance to play games in most cases, and games they are getting to play, they're playing online or they're playing in a back garden. They're not getting to test things out at events. But I buy the books for more than just the rules as well. So like I come down favourable. Like I come down for them, and I think that they are a good addition. I wouldn't be happy if they started doing them right at the very start of Age of Sigmar 3, when they're obviously going to be releasing new battle tomes and stuff. But I think it's quite cool that when the game starts to wind down, get stale, and they're going to bring new changes in, that they can patch things, as you say, and layer extra rules on to older books.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's easier to. I'm in the same kind of camp as you. I'm massively in favour of them. And we kind of talked about it just before we started actually recording, that the lore in it has been amazing.
It's been so good. Yeah.
And it is that build up to AoS 3, which obviously we now know is coming soon. But yeah, it is kind of, these books are great. They kind of just give you those extra bits, kind of freshen up those armies before, like you said, the next version comes out with all of the new battle tomes. But it's easier to give 5-6 armies something new in one book than it is to release 5 or 6 battle tomes all at once, because that's just, I couldn't imagine what it would be like in the GW rules writing office if they were having to redo lots and lots of battle tomes at once. So
we've been able to see what happened with 40k, and they had something very similar to Broken Realms, and I think their battle tome release schedule has been very quick as well after the new edition. So I guess it just depends on how much changes in Age of Sigmar 3, like what the release schedule is going to be like and how much longevity you get out of the rules of the stuff that's in Broken Realms. But one thing I keep saying to people is compare this to Malign Portents. What do you prefer?
Yes.
Malign Portents was alright, but it was nowhere near as cool as the Broken Realm stuff.
No, 100%. Malign Portents, it was good, and you kind of got those for the harbingers of whatever the titles were.
Remember those guys?
But yeah, it didn't really kind of hit home as big as what Broken Realms is. I mean, you think of what's coming out with Kragnos, and you've got Kragnos himself, you've got brand new Lord Croak model, you've got the Witch Hunters, you've got the new Slanesh Demons. It's kind of chalk and cheese between Malign Portents, where you got the Fungoid Shaman and Knight of Shrouds, and that was about
it's really just it's only really the Shaman and the Ordinator that you even see. You very rarely see the Chaos one or the Night Hunt one.
Yeah. So do you want to kind of give us before we talk about Belakor himself, do you want to give us a kind of rough rundown of what makes the Legion of the First Prince so good?
Yeah, so the first thing is that you cannot ally anything into this faction, which is fairly unique, but you do get access to every single Chaos Demon warscroll. I'm actually a little bit upset I've not written down the number, but it's in the hundreds of warscrolls that you've got access to between the 4 Chaos Gods. So you've got access to like so much stuff. What the faction gives you over taking a dedicated Chaos God with potentially allies is everything in the army gets a 6++ after save. In the first iteration, before it was FAQ'd, that was obviously in addition to any after save models already had. So like when I was playtesting this when it first came out, before I took it to tournaments, I had Plague Bearers that had a 5++, 5++ save, which was disgusting.
Very nice. Yeah.
But yeah, no, everything gets a 6++ after save, which you can improve to 5++ with the correct command trait. The other cool thing about it is you can summon at the end of the movement phase, and you can summon any minor Chaos Demon. So Plague Bearers, Horrors, Demonettes or Bloodletters, and now with the new version, Belakor can also summon Chaos Furies, which can get up to loads of shenanigans. If you've ever read the scroll, you'd know why. But that's on you roll 3 dice, and then on a 10 plus, you can bring it on. So it's not something that you have to cast. It can't be unbound. 10 plus on 3 dice is supposed to be average, but I can say wholeheartedly I've only failed it a handful of times in all the games I've played. It feels like it goes off like more often than 50-50. But even if you take that over a 5-game event, you're still going to get it a lot of the time. Like, it's a lot of extra bodies. That used to be 10 horrors as well that you could bring on, but they've reduced that down to 5, which is much more in line with the other choices.
Yeah, you can understand why, because those horrors split
Yeah.
as well. So
It's 50 wins.
yeah, with those different choices that you can summon, what are your kind of go-to unit?
Yeah.
If every turn, say, you got that off, what would you be bringing on the table if you had a choice?
So default is, in most cases, 10 Plague Bearers for me. They're -1 to be shot, 5++ after save. They don't need to be near the general to get the 5+ instead of the 6+. They're just pretty good objective holders, but there is a legitimate case for every single option, and I have summoned every single option before. So you pick the model that's going to roll the 3 dice, and then the models that you summon are the models that correlate with the keyword for the hero that's rolling the 3 dice. So if you have a Nurgle hero, you can only summon Plague Bearers from that model, and it's bring them unholy within 12 and 9 away. So sometimes you're restricted by space. And in the sort of army lists that I take, Plague Bearers can be summoned from Belakor and like a Vermin Lord Corruptor, for example.
Okay.
So they're quite common to be summoned. Belakor can summon any Chaos God models now. He never used to be able to summon any in the first iteration, but in the new version he can summon any of the Chaos Gods, and he can also summon Chaos Furies. But he gets access to reroll hits if there's at least one of each Chaos God unit within 9 inches of him when he piles in an attack. So some of the lists I've ran have had Horrors, Demonettes, and Plague Bearers in it, and then I've summoned Bloodletters on to give him the rerolls, so he's got access to everything. And then Chaos Furies can pile in and retreat after their activation, or retreat instead of activating one of the two, so you can get to places that you normally couldn't if you bring them on, which is pretty cool. So yeah, every option is valid, but I think Plague Bearers are out and out the winner for efficiency.
So when you build your list, do you kind of think of, I need to summon X, Y, or Z, but you obviously need a hero with that keyword. So like when you write a list for that, do you put a kind of the very first thing that you choose are what the heroes are, and then you'll kind of fill your battle line around that? Or
not specific to the summoning, but for me, the allegiance of Legion of the First Prince is very lightweight. There isn't a lot in it, and I think the reason there isn't a lot in it is because it could get very bloated very fast when you've got access to every single Chaos Demon warscroll.
Sure.
So my lists always have very powerful heroes in it, which is one of the reasons I really enjoy it. Like, I like the hero hammer aspect, where you've got the big powerful named characters, or like they can go and do something on their own. So I do tend to pick the heroes before I pick the rest of the list when I'm building a list for this. So an element, it does come down to it, because I mentioned the Vermin Lord, and I kind of lean towards the Vermin Lord Corruptor, but I've also played with a Warpseer before. The Warpseer doesn't have any Chaos God keyword, so you can't summon from the Warpseer.
Right, okay.
Whereas you can from the Corruptor, because it has the Nurgle keyword.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, you've got to kind of rather than just going, I want these demons, these demons, these demons. You actually I need to think what I need to summon. So
it's much easier now that Belakor can summon anything, because before I only used to be able to summon from the Corruptor and Kairos in my lists, because they were the only two like heroes that had a keyword.
Right, okay.
So, but now Belakor, he's the hardest one to shift in the army as well. He's always going to be there, so you're always going to be able to bring something on to back him up if you've got space.
Do you feel that Archeon potentially has a spot in the list, because he's obviously got every keyword there?
Definitely, yeah. I've not tried it myself. I know that our current master, John Bayliss, from Aberdeen, did play a version of the list initially when, like, not long after I took it to an event last August. He was pushing a list around with Archeon and the Legion. I think he got on all right with it as well. So it definitely does have play. It's just now with Belakor costing a lot more points. It kind of reduces your options because Archeon's obviously very expensive.
Yeah.
But no, I don't see why you couldn't play it. Archeon's a cool model, and he has the demon keywords and stuff. So
Very nice. Do you find the spell lore, well, the lack
the
of spell
spell.
lore, restrictive at all, or is it just something that you've kind of like you just accept that you literally get one spell and that's it?
Yeah, so I had the luxury of playing with the last version of the Allegiance as well, where there was a small spell lore. One of them gave you rerolls against death units, so I don't think I ever casted it. There was access to fight when you die spells, and you could stack them. Now there is only the one fight when you die spell in Legion of the First Prince, but there used to be the Legion of the First Prince one and the Chaos Ascendant one.
Right.
So I did use the stack that on the 30 Plague Bearers to make them, like, obviously people are going to need to shift that unit because it's screening everything else, but they get hit back when they do. But now it's only the one, and it's only when they die in the combat phase, so it's a lot more restricted. But I play with very heavy spellcasters, and I wouldn't have space to cast the spells. Kairos can cast 3, Vermilord and Belakor can cast 2, and that's kind of my triumvirate, as I call it. And I take 2 endless spells. So if you mix in Mystic Shield for reroll saves of 1, which is good, and Arcane Bolt, you don't really need access to the other spells. Like, you would probably use a Mystic Shield or Arcane Bolt anyway, and that's me playing a magic heavy version of it. So yeah, it would be nice to have more choice, but the spells would probably need to be bent to make you not cast the ones that you're already going to be casting anyway. So
Definitely.
I don't think it makes much of a difference. I think that there was a lot of people very negative when they saw the Allegiance. And yeah, fair enough. Like, they were obviously expecting more, and they've seen the stuff other Allegiances have got. But picking on spell lores and stuff, I don't think it really adds much to the flavour of the army.
To be fair, I mean, I was one of the first ones when the book came out. I looked at it and went, ugh, okay, is that it? Like,
Yeah,
I think you're always used to having, like, even the kind of smaller allegiances that get kind of supported in things like Broken Realms, they always seem to have like 1, 2, or 3 spells that you could choose from.
yeah, definitely.
So yeah, like turning to that and just seeing one, I was like, oh, is that it? Like,
It speeds up the hero phase, I can tell you that.
Yeah.
When you know what you've got to cast.
Yeah.
But no, I definitely get it. They definitely could go back and add stuff to it. My theory is these kind of allegiances that have been added are, like, the good ones will probably get absorbed into a book of some kind, like an actual battle tome eventually. So there's always some outside chance that it could be expanded on in future, which could be cool.
Definitely. So you mentioned a bit earlier about like one of the command traits that can make it a 5++ save. Do you? I'm assuming you don't have to have Belakor then as your general for this army. You can kind of choose a non-named character, so you can actually pick that command trait.
Yeah, so I've played both versions. Not since he got a new warscroll, but I did in, like, the older version play with Belakor as a general to try out the regeneration. So he gets access to an ability when he is the general, where in the battle shock phase you can roll a dice for each unit that's lost models, and on a certain value, can't remember off the top of my head, you can bring back D3 models or 1 horror. That could be quite useful, especially when you take into account if you put him into combat and you start taking damage onto multiple units when he shifts wounds over to other units, which is another cool thing he can do. You can bring back quite a lot of models over the course of the game. Personally, because I take Kairos, in almost all of my lists. Like in fact, every single time I've played it, I've played Belakor and Kairos. I like to give Kairos access to 5++, because a lot of the time you want to try and put Kairos in a position where he's threatening a spell through the spell portal, but he's also then at risk at some shooting.
Yeah.
So in theory, you're only giving them 16% more chance to save a point of damage, but we all know it's a dice game, and when you're playing for those outside chances, a 5++ over a 6++, it feels a lot more than 16% sometimes. Obviously, it feels a lot less
100%.
sometimes as well.
Someone who plays a Beast Claw, it's 5+ and Stone Skeleton is a lifesaver for me.
Like sometimes you take 16 saves and allocate 2 wounds, like it's nuts.
Yeah.
Like so I like to have the 5++, just because it obviously gives your opponent a conundrum of, well, he's got access to that 5++. How much do I dedicate? I'm putting everything right in front of him to try and kill him. So I tend to gravitate towards that. A couple of other choices as well. I think you can get reroll saves in combat, which is okay, but again, the majority of threats for your heroes are shooting, so I tend to not. I've never played it. The other one is you can give a +1 to the summoning roll, but again, as I alluded to earlier, I very rarely fail it, and the +1 to it is not as good as the 5++, at least in the lists that I've played. So I think that is the go-to choice, the Ruinous Aura, it's called.
Is that
Belakor is a valid choice as well, just general.
Do you put that on your Vermin Lord Corruptor then, because he's got a bigger base and it can kind of hit more people, or do you put it on a smaller character that you can kind of hide in units?
Yeah, so I've had it on the Corruptor when I was playing the standard 3 big heroes. I've not tried to make it fit in the new version with Belakor being 380 points, but I did have a version with 2 Vermin Lords. I had a Vermin Lord Deceiver and a Corruptor. In that version of the list, I gave it to the Deceiver because the Corruptor was being teleported into people's faces, so he was able to kind of stay back and give the aura wherever it was needed. Iterations I'm playing now, I'm messing about with a Khorne Demon Prince to get the Blood Slip Ground command trait to stop charges. I've given it to him in this version. So again, the Vermin Lord has access to 5++ on his warscroll, so he doesn't need to be in the aura to get that benefit, and allows him to go off and do his own thing, while the Demon Prince can kind of go with the main force of the army.
Very nice. So, we've kind of talked about how strong it can be, summoning kind of models on every turn and doing things like that. How does someone, if they kind of don't really know much about this allegiance and suddenly face it on a tabletop, without giving away all your secrets, what are the kind of counters to it? Or as a caveat to that, is there certain armies that if you face across the table, you really don't want to face?
Yeah, and like shooting is the downfall of a lot of armies. Like I've built a lot of defense into the list, but shooting is always going to be a problem for armies that take big heroes. Like it's a big chunk of your army and a big linchpin to your game plan when one of them falls. So yeah, if you've got any committed shooting in your list, you're probably going to be off to a good start. So KO are going to be really hard to deal with, I think, for this army. Just the sheer mobility that they've got is going to counter the mobility you get from summoning. And the fact that they can just go anywhere on the table and shoot you, it's pretty good for them. I think that it can be a very frustrating army to play against, because it's not so much about what the Legion can do, it's more about what it can stop you doing. That's how it wins games. It really doesn't do a lot of damage. Like if you plug it into Listbot, shout out to JP, the damage from it is very, very low. Like it actually looks like there's no damage. You need to zoom really far in to see the damage. But you can get explosive damage from the Corruptor, from his spell, from Kairos' spell, and then the artifact that you give the Corruptor. We've not touched on the artifacts yet, but there's a very tasty mortal wound output from combat on the Corruptor. If I touch on that very quickly just now, the Corruptor can reroll hits with his command ability, and the artifact does D3 mortal wounds and a 5+. But the Corruptor already has on a 6+, does 1 mortal wound on his attacks. So
wow. Okay.
you can reroll the hit. It's basically like that Realm of Light sword that you used to see everybody taking.
Sword of Judgment, wasn't
Sword
it?
of Judgment. Yeah, it's like that on crack. it's even better than Sword of Judgment. So yeah, no, it's a very good artifact. But the Corruptor's a good linchpin in the army. You take him out, you can't deal with hordes as well, and a lot of your damage disappears. So that's a good way to counter it. Also stops you summoning Plague Bearers. But I think it is just about keeping a level head, playing the mission, and trying to not get triggered when the army stops you doing everything that you want to do.
Sure.
I think that's the only way to really beat it, because it really doesn't do a lot of damage.
I suppose talking about like KO and how they can just teleport around the table, if you've got summoning, you can kind of block off big chunks of the table with kind of conga lines almost.
Yeah, definitely.
Because they've got to still drop like 9 away, so if you can kind of cover a big section of table with 1 unit of 10, then it kind of stops that ship suddenly going across to the other side of the table and dropping exactly where you don't want it to.
That's one of the best things you can do against any army that can summon in Deep Strike, is to just push stuff forward, because it does limit where you can put your summoning. Like, all that mobility all of a sudden goes. Like when everybody was playing with the bridge, it used to be like, if they didn't go first with the Soulscream Bridge with their shooting unit, you just run something sacrificial right into the middle of the table, and it shuts down the bridge, because like they need to be 9 away. That is a strong thing against KO, and also legions. It limits where you can put your models. Like, put a model right in the middle of an objective to stop stuff that's getting summoned into the objective circle as well.
Yeah,
that's a good way to counter it.
Do you think Change Host is obviously a kind of army that's always talked about, but with AoS 3 coming, that could potentially kind of disappear. But is Change Host a good counter for you? Because as you like just said, they can kind of just teleport units into the table to kind of stop you summoning further up the table.
Yeah, Change Host it would depend on the type of Change Host. If it's the traditional one that you used to see with the Flamers, I actually don't mind my chances against that. Like, if they teleport a unit of Flamers, then they get 9 inches behind your line that they can shoot. And I don't know. I think that they would lose more than I would with that sort of shooting list. I've played a lot of Change Host, and I don't think it's. I don't know if it's because I think a lot of Change Host players don't think it's as strong as it is, because they know how close they are to losing a lot of the time that they're playing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't mind Change Host so much. I definitely, if you were to make me pick a shooting army that I'm scared of, it's KO and the Daughters of Cain version that's going around with the Stalkers. Yeah. That's a scary shooting list.
They can shoot in the hero phase and then in the shooting phase as well. Yeah.
Like, even the Flamer version of the Change Host, it's the Horrors that win the game. Like, the Horrors just live a bit longer because you're worried about the Flamers, but like, if it's the Horrors that win the game in Change Host. And yeah, I think for shooting it's KO and Doc at the moment. Maybe Lumineth to an extent as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because obviously Lumineth came out at the start of lockdowns.
Yeah.
And they've had a second book since the start of lockdowns. And we've yet to kind of be to events to actually see them on the table. So it will be interesting to see how they play, because, I mean, okay, TTS isn't the best kind of source of how things work, but I mean, there's still been some real life events with Lumineth on the tables, like in other countries, and
they've done well.
They've done well, but they're not up to the levels of what everyone said they were going to be. I think sometimes when they look at the war scrolls and they see so many abilities, they just go, "Oh, they're broken," but actually they're not that bad when you compare them to everything else. They're still 1 wound models with a 4-up save, so.
This is going to be a very elitist opinion, so I will apologise in advance. But I think it might have been JP I was talking to, but one thing that I noticed was, over the last year, we've had a lot of TTS results and a lot of smaller tournaments and stuff happening in Australia. no disrespect to any of those, but who most of us would have regarded as the top players from like a year and a bit ago haven't really been taking part in a lot of that. For the most part, there's been a few exceptions, and when they have played, they've done well, but a lot of the top, sort of at least the ones I'm familiar with, like the UK Masters players, haven't really been taking part in the online events and the stuff that has been going on. So I think that while we've seen some results, I don't know how much you can read into them over the. I think that when the country starts to open up and we start seeing big events again, I think it might be very different from what we've seen online.
I think that's a completely kind of valid reason, because I mean, it's always said you can give a top player a rubbish army and they'll still do good.
Yeah.
And you could give someone a net list, but unless they know how to play the army, they're never going to play it well. So I don't think there's anything elitist about that, because it is true. Like, you see kind of who plays on TTS and some of the, like you said, in Australia and a couple in America, and that there's not the kind of normal names that you see going to them. So
it's not to say this hasn't been a good way for those people to get their names out there as well. Maybe they didn't take part in events because they couldn't travel, but they can obviously attend TTS. Maybe they are like as good as Jack Armstrong. But like, I definitely am looking forward to seeing the sort of top 10 from the UK circuit start taking armies again and see what they do, see what they reckon of the meta.
Oh, 100%. It'll be interesting I'm looking forward to seeing the list for Six Nations.
It's going to be carnage.
Yeah. It's Six Nations is in November now, isn't
November now. Yeah, it's November and it's in Wales now.
Yeah. And this is kind of after almost a year and a half of no one playing tournament. So it's going to be, like you said, carnage.
It's a new edition. Everybody's going to be scrambling. It's not going to be as bad as the 2018 one when Age of Sigmar 2 came out. I think the book came out days before list submission. I think list submission got pushed to the Monday after the book came out on the Saturday.
Oh god!
And there was just some absolutely ridiculous things. It was before the FAQ as well, so it was nuts. It's not going to be as bad as that, I don't think. No. I think everybody's expecting Age of Sigmar 3 in the next month or so.
Yeah.
Next couple of months maybe. So we should at least have an FAQ, maybe new battle tomes. That'll be good.
100%. Yeah, it's I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait. It's something I think after, like we said, over a year now of not really playing that much, it's kind of almost like our treat reward at the end.
Definitely. Yeah.
Everyone survived this. Now go out and play the new edition, and here's some lovely new models. So
look how many of us are travelling to Sunderland.
I know.
To play Age of Sigmar 2.
Yeah.
Everybody just can't wait to roll dice.
So we're all going to Battle Bunker on June the
12th.
Yeah. 12th, yeah. And it's 29. There's actually 30 players, because I know one of the Warlords who hasn't signed up yet, but it's definitely coming. So 30 players coming to a game that, like you said, is probably one of the last AoS 2 events happening.
It's got to be one of them, yeah. For sure.
And I think for most of us, it's just we want to go and roll some dice. Like,
definitely, yeah.
I don't really care. I still haven't decided what army I'm taking, but it's like I might just take an awful army, just something that I can just play 3 games with. It's a one day, or it's not exactly a big massive event for us, but yeah, it's a farewell to AoS 2. I know Martin's contemplating. He's not sure whether he can come yet, but if he's coming, he's contemplating finishing AoS 2 as he started AoS 1 with his AoS 2 with his Nighthaunt army.
Oh, that'll be cool.
Kind of like a final goodbye to it. So yeah, can't wait. It's going to be awesome. But fingers crossed. AoS 3 is out soon. We've kind of talked about it near the start, but with AoS 3 coming out, do you think that these books, like Legion of the First Prince and that, are still viable for AoS 3? In regards to, like, is it still going to be a supported thing for match play, or do you think it will get moved to narrative at some point?
So I think you can even see from what happened with Legion of the First Prince and the Wrath of the Everchosen iteration of the Chaos Ascendant Allegiance, like, they are fairly keen to retire things when they're no longer needed. So yeah, no, I totally think that at some point, everything that we've seen in these books will become like discarded. But I think that will coexist with a new battle tome or something that replaces it. And I know that everybody like can come down quite negative on Games Workshop at some times, but they have said that all the existing battle tomes work with Age of Sigmar 3.
Yeah.
So we're obviously not going through the same sort of changes that you saw between 8th and 9th edition 40k, when they obviously said that there was going to be a lot of changes, or maybe it was between 7th and 8th, and they basically rolled out a battle tome for everybody. They gave everybody an index book.
It was 7th and 8th where...
7th and 8th, yeah. So it's not the same. Like, they're not giving us all an index book with new stuff, are they? They've said the battle tomes for Age of Sigmar 2 work. So this stuff in these Broken Realms books will exist until it's replaced with another battle tome, is my take on it anyway. And I think that's fine. I would be quite happy to buy a battle tome that replaced the Belakor stuff, even if it changed significantly. I would still want to do it. The only people I really do feel sorry for over the last year are the Lumineth guys.
Yeah.
I do think that was poorly handled, and I suppose to an extent Slanesh. But I'm all for new battle tomes and stuff.
Yeah,
and it probably will get replaced at some point.
I think anyone who played Fantasy, Warhammer Fantasy, and saw how long it was between army books, even like not even replacement army books, but just actual army books for different armies. The fact that AoS gets supported so much, don't complain, because it's a great thing. It's nice. I like getting new books and reading through it all. I'm sure everyone would be very quick to jump on a bandwagon with their pitchforks if suddenly it was 6 months between books. It was I like it. I mean, I don't mind extra books. I normally try and buy every copy I can because I just like reading up on everything. But there are books occasionally, like the Wrath of the Everchosen book, I didn't go near it. As far as I was aware, it was a like campaign style book.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I'd get it, but I'm not that fussed about it. But the fact that, like I said, there are kind of these allegiance abilities in there that kind of breathe new life into an army, I'm all for it. But talking about breathing new life, we've kind of talked about him a bit, but we've not really gone through his war scroll. Should we talk about Belakor himself?
Yes.
And the upgrade.
I love his new war scroll. So where do you want to start?
I was about to say, where did you want to start? Because obviously you've used the old version and you've used the new version. So, I mean, you're the master, so you go for it.
So this was another complaint, but I was a big fan of the old model, so I got exactly what I wanted. Not much changed, it just got bigger and better. So I think the old version of him was in line with the Demon Prince. So I think he had 8 wounds. He still had a 4-up in unrendable save. But his attacks, he had 6 attacks stock. He didn't degrade because he wasn't a monster. He was rend 1, damage 2 with his sword, and that was it for his attack profiles. He's now a monster that degrades. So he starts off at 14-inch move, degrades down to 6. But he now gets 8 attacks on his sword, and he's now rend 2 damage 2, which I think is awesome. I love that. He's 14 wounds, 4+ unrendable save, and he's now got a couple of extra weapon profiles as well. He's got 1 attack with his claw, which is rend 1 damage 2, and 1 attack with his spearing tail, which is a cheeky 3-inch range, 2s and 2s when he's not, 2s and 1s, but 2s and 2s when he's not wounded, rend 3 damage 2. So that can be quite useful. His ability, Everybody Hates, used to be you needed to write down a unit in secret, which was a minigame I hated. As much as I liked the model, I hated having to write it down, and then you obviously you don't want your opponent to think that you're cheating, so you like physically write it down on a bit of paper that you can show them later or something. And like when you reveal it, you then roll a 5+ to see if they can do anything for like the rest of the phase. It's now that they had to roll the 5 up. It's now that the Belakor player has to roll a 3 up when they reveal it. But one of the things I found really interesting now is through not having to write it down. You now just pick it at the start of a phase, and then it's applied to that unit for the rest of the subsequent phases.
Okay.
So if your opponent has multiple threats, you don't need to decide before their hero phase, so you can see what unit gets buffed up. And then you can decide at the start of the movement phase that you want to like mess up that unit.
Yeah.
So you don't need to say in the hero phase, you can wait till later phases, which is really interesting. And it came up in my game against Mike, which was the first time I've played with it, just being able to hold off on revealing that to see what happens. You can pick any unit. It's really cool.
That is cool, because you can always have an idea of, okay, that's the kind of the key piece of their army.
Yeah, sometimes it's obvious, yeah.
But if they've got like 1 or 2 threats, sometimes you'll find that someone pushes one thing forwards and leaves the other thing back to defend one of their objectives. And yeah, it's sometimes you can pick the wrong unit almost, and you've almost wasted the abilities. So being able to actually pick one is really strong.
Like there's some really cool things I've not been able to explore yet, but I'm excited to. And I'm glad I've got a platform to tell people I'm going to do this ahead of actually doing it, so they can be scared. But you don't have to roll it every single phase. It's you may. So like things like against Teclis, you could like pick Teclis in the hero phase, potentially stop him casting any of his spells, and then you could let him move, and then stop him from charging. So like let him come closer or something, or just
okay.
let kind of bait something in. And then at the start of the charge phase, roll the dice. So you could do some really cheeky stuff, like very risky, but I think it's very fitting with Belakor's narrative. Like, I can't wait to do things like that. And I'm definitely going to try and live rent-free in people's brains now, telling them, like, you don't know when I'm going to do it, who I'm going to pick. It's really fun.
It's the mind games.
Yeah, exactly. So it's psychological warfare at its finest.
So he's also got the healing ability for feeling battle shocks. Is that
was on his old one as well? So if somebody feels a battle shock within a certain range, you can heal D3. Definitely does play a part.
Find that useful? I put something on Twitter earlier on this week about I wish AoS 3 had an ability like Inspiring Presence. I wish it was once per battle. Like, literally, you can only use it on one unit once per battle. They're immune to battle shock. And it becomes a lot more tactical, and it kind of makes it a bit more thematic, whereabouts it's literally they're being roused by the leader, whereas every turn it's like, no, come on, you can do it. And it's like, well, we've lost another 5 guys. Why are we still here?
I've made suggestions before about putting up to 2 command points and stuff. Like, I'm completely with you. I think Inspiring Presence is one of the contributing factors to longer games. And it definitely is too powerful to be able to just do it at will across multiple units in one turn.
Yeah, it's something more about. So, I mean, there's a lot of armies out there that have these kind of debuffs to bravery and Sylvaneth, for example. That's what made me put it out. It's like the Outcast Battalion, like if you fail a battle shock, D3 extra run, and then you've got the Vengeful Skull route where another D3 can run. And it's like, oh, that would be amazing, but I just thought about it and went, well, no, because all that they do is just spend a command point and make them immune.
So I very actively play around Battle Shock with this army, though, because Kairos has access to that flat 6 mortal wound spell, which is really good at removing heroes that are going to use Inspiring Presence.
Yeah.
And the Vermin Lord has a -1 bravery debuff and normally chunks a few models out of a unit, so I definitely am used to playing around the Battle Shock element, so I have used that ability quite often.
That's
but
nice.
yeah, no, I do think that Inspiring Presence is very strong, and it does bravery doesn't matter, does it? So.
Exactly. I know I think it was 40k, they had a stratagem that it was a bit like Inspiring Presence, and now I think they have made it like once per game.
They've changed the whole Battle Shock mechanic, though. It's now
right. Okay.
You roll it. So if you fail your leadership test, you lose 1 model, and you then roll a number of dice for each model that's left, and then on a 1, an additional model flees. So if you got like 10 models left, you roll 10 dice on a 1. So it's like there's Battle Shock or whatever it's called, like leadership, and then there's also combat attrition, I think it's called.
Right.
So it's like there's two different mechanics there, and I much prefer that because it's a lot less. Well, I suppose it depends on what way you look at it. It's more punishing against some elite units, but it definitely does punish big units where you're rolling loads and loads of dice.
Yeah.
You get loads of ones for them to run away, but equally it's much harder to just wipe an entire unit out from Battle Shock, which is why Inspiring Presence is used so much. Like, if you think about a unit of 40 clan rats, if you lose 16, 17 of them, like, you're going to be left with a handful of models left after Battle Shock. It can be a bit much to just have like a full unit disappear.
Yeah.
So I'd be keen to see the combat attrition thing come in, because it definitely seems interesting.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I mean, any way to, like I said, just get rid of Inspiring Presence, but not make it by turn 2 when nobody's got any models left is definitely a bonus. And things like this with Belakor's spell, of being able to then actually use that and heal wounds. Like you said, you kind of play around it and you know, right, I need to get rid of that hero because then they're out of range for Inspiring Presence.
Yeah. It's just because when you have access to that ability, you do think about it more. Like, I'll be honest, a lot of the armies I've played with, I didn't even think about it. You just try and kill everything instead of relying on Battle Shock. Like, that's the game plan, but this army can't kill much at all, so you've got to think about it.
You've got to make them run away.
Yeah.
And he's got so Belakor's got 2 spells as well. He can cast 2 spells, which was the same as the old one as well, wasn't it? As well as
Yeah, it's the -1 to wound, which again is a really strong spell. There's not many wound debuff ability. There's more now, but at least when I was playing this last year, there wasn't much in the way of debuffing wind rolls. I think it was Fire Slayers was the only one that you saw often where wind rolls were getting debuffed. So no, it's definitely good.
So, are you happy with like the changes and the kind of points increase? Do you think he's like definitely still worth? Because he was kind of cropping up in a lot of people's chaos lists.
Yeah, so he was broken. Like he was a broken warscroll at 240 points. As soon as, like, I hate allies. Like, even from a narrative sense, I dislike allies as a mechanic, because you either only see allies if it's a very, very narrative list where synergies are not really taken into account, or you see allies when they're too cheap and they're broken. Like Aetherwings, Belakor, Tree Revenants for a while. Like, when these things crop up over and over again, like Heartrenders, it's because they're cheap, they're underpointed, they've got a powerful ability, and they just get seen everywhere. So he was definitely in that category, and I am much more happy with him being 380 and being more impactful on the table. And he definitely does do really well in the Legion of the First Prince. I'm not a Slaves to Darkness player. It probably has been a bit detrimental to him going up in points, because obviously he was a Slaves to Darkness War Scroll.
Yeah.
But he's very survivable in Legion. We didn't. I think I briefly touched on it, but he has an unrendable save. He then can, before he allocates wounds to himself, he can shift them to a unit that's within 9 inches on a 4+, and then he can take his 6 up or 5 up, depending on how close he is to his general, after save. So he's very hard to get rid of. He can't do that in Slaves, so there will be instances where he just falls over. But for 380 points, I think he's really cool.
Excellent. No, he is a beast. Like, I love him. And the fact that they've pointed him so he can still be allied into other armies, it's like, well, if you want him, yeah, you can have him, but here's actually like you said, a worthwhile or a kind of sensible points cost now, and not
you will see him.
Auto take.
It's 140 points, so you'll maybe see one less buffing. Like, that's like dropping a buffing wizard out of a list to take him. Like, I think you'll still see him, because that ability to shut a unit down for potentially 2 turns is really strong. So yeah, I think you will see him as an ally.
Yeah, definitely. So let's talk about before we kind of finish, your actual hobby for the army. So you decided, for some reason, to remove all the eyes from your army. Why?
So people have been slagging me for that endlessly. Um, I like the narrative of Belakor. My two favorite characters in the Warhammer universe are Marathi and Belakor. I don't know what that says about me as a person, but like I like it. I like his characters, and I was trying to play into his flaws. So the kind of idea was that only his kind of generals and like his triumvirate were allowed to have eyes, and the rest of his lesser demons were just like blind to him. Like they couldn't look on him. They just followed him blindly. So I wanted to remove all the eyes from all the lesser demons. So the horrors look really cool with their eyes, and so do the plague bearers as well. So I was keen to go along with it. I hope that Nurglings never become a thing,
Oh God,
because
yeah.
scraping the eyes off of Nurgling bases would be so bad. But I'm quite happy with how it's come out. I've not finished it yet. It is tabletop ready, the majority of the army. Um, I've still got. I want to do an oil wash, which is a new technique for me. I've not got around to doing it yet, and I will go around and highlight everything. But the effect of the army looks pretty cool, with all the lesser demons painted in the same scheme. So I'm not a rainbow army. It's all the different demons painted in a very kind of pallid, light scheme. I think it looks quite cool. My wife hates it. She doesn't like the army at all. She thinks it looks a mess, but I'm quite happy with it. Like, she keeps saying it's like the least favourite thing that I've ever done
Oh,
hobby
right.
wise.
Oh,
She's
wow.
not into the hobby or anything, but she despises this. So, but I'm happy with it. I think it looks
I
pretty
think
cool.
they look really cool.
Yeah,
I thought like the whole thing without having the eyes was really cool as well. Like seeing it because you started doing it. When was it? Last year? It was during
I
lockdown, wasn't
started
it? Or
started around about April was when I kind of bought everything, started building it, and the building obviously took quite a long time because of the scraping.
yeah.
But no, it's definitely an army that I can expand, and I think that removing all the eyes from the demons goes some way towards making them fit a more cohesive force as well. Like they are very different looking models, so trying to do something other than just paint them in the same scheme to unify them maybe goes some way to making it look pretty cool as well.
Yeah, it definitely looks cohesive to me when I've seen the pictures of
Hmm.
it. And like you said, there's so many different demon units out there that you
Yeah,
could very easily kind of just expand to it. It's just like you said, having to scrape off more eyes is
yeah, I'm not looking forward to it. Demonettes have been the hardest so far.
oh, I can imagine.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I've only got 20 of them, thankfully. The blue horrors weren't too bad, and I never bothered scraping the eyes off of the brimstones because technically they're not eyes, they're just fire, aren't they? So
Yeah, that's true.
don't at me.
So quickly moving on, future plans. Are you kind of sticking with this army going forwards, or kind of see what happens for AOS 3, or
So I kind of went the opposite direction during lockdown from a lot of people. I didn't do a whole lot of hobby other than this Legion army kind of at the start of the first lockdown. I just kind of collected loads of different armies. So my whole plan is to have access to like a whole bunch of different armies with different playstyles, and I can not play the one army endlessly. Because what happened was I play a lot of Warhammer. Being a more competitive player, I would play a lot of games per month, and I got burned out, tired of my army, ended up selling it, buying a new army, and the cycle continues. So I will continue to play Legion. I'm going to take it to the event in Sunderland in June, just because I'm really keen to get Belakor on the table, give him a run out before the new edition. But I've also got a KO army in the works, a Daughters of Cain army. I've got a full Zinch army for this Legions. Like I do have a change host version of it as well.
nice?
So like I've got other things that I'm going to be working on. I've got Archeon to expand into different things as well. So
It's,
I probably get one more army before the end of the year, and then I'm a student, so and I'm a parent and I work part time. So I know that as I get further into my course, the time I'm going to have to dedicate towards hobby is going to get less and less and less. So, but no, I've got lots on the go for possible Age of Sigmar 3 stuff.
excellent. No,
Yeah.
it's someone who owns multiple
Yeah,
armies.
you've got everything.
I could say it's definitely. I prefer it because it is a lot more fun. Like you said, you're not getting burnt out on the same army.
I think it will as well. I think it's definitely more future-proof than waiting to see what's going to be bent and then having to paint up quickly before an event and stuff. Like,
Yeah.
the dream is to not be painting the night before a tournament. I don't know how likely that is, but we'll see.
I'm pretty sure you could be the best painter and have like the most amazing looking army, and people will still be painting the night before an event.
Probably.
Just because they want to like just do the final bit of detail.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I like having the choice. It's fun, and like I said, you don't get burnt out. I mean, we're off to Battle Bunker tomorrow night to play our first game of AoS in person. So I think
Good.
there's 10 of us going down for 5
Awesome.
tables. So it's going to be like almost like a mini club night almost.
Do you mean you're practicing? Oh my god.
Oh, not practicing. It's just we just went. Oh, should we try and get a game in? And we're like, yeah. And then before we knew it, like 10 people had signed up, and we're like, oh, okay. We'll just
Should
have
play Triumph and Treachery and then never talk again.
Yeah. But it's got to the point where it's like I'm on a Wednesday night at 9:30 at night, and I still don't know what army I'm taking tomorrow because I just can't decide.
I think that's going to be the problem when you've got access to everything. It is just picking what you're going to play.
Yeah.
It's very easy when you've only got one army.
Yeah, you just pick up the box and battle
Yeah.
team and away you go. But no, I expect tomorrow at lunchtime when I'm not on calls, I'm going to have to just choose whatever army I find in the garage first and go, right, let's write a list out of that one and take it.
Yeah.
I just want to roll some dice. I don't really care, to be honest.
I can assure you rolling dice is just as much fun as it was before lockdowns.
I can imagine.
It's awesome.
I just can't wait. So before we finish up, AOS 3 initial thoughts. I know we've touched on them a little bit. But what are your kind of feelings behind it? Are you excited or apprehensive or?
I'm so excited. Like, the little bits and pieces that we've seen so far. Just personally, I love the double turn, but the little bits and pieces that we're hearing about the double turn being mitigated somehow, like I think one of the rumours is an objective being removed in turn 3 if you go second.
Yeah.
A little apprehensive about it because I think from what we've heard, you can, at least you presume, you can still choose to go. So there may be some people that are up after turns 1 and 2 and then choose to go second turn 3 in order to remove an objective, which will make it even harder to come back. But on face value, that seems pretty cool. I'm trying to think, what else have we heard? Battalions disappearing.
Battalion? Yeah.
I'm a fan of that. As a change host player, and some of them are just ridiculous. And I've played against and seen plenty of lists that don't include change host or even battalions in Zinch to know that the book isn't going to die with that choice. But there is a lot of have and have-nots across all the battle tomes. As I think that might have even been the words Ben Johnson used when he was talking about it in the little video. And if they do decide to just remove battalions and put these like different core battalions, I think they called them, that everybody has access to, that definitely seems like it could be cool.
Oh, 100%, yeah. I mean, that's one of my kind of most kind of looking forward to features that they've mentioned so far is that introduction of core battalions. It's if it means that, like you said, the other battalions go away, I'm not that fussed about that. Like, they're nice, but like you said, there's a lot of factions that have amazing ones, and then you've got others that just not very good at all. So if everyone gets a level playing field, but you've got a choice of different battalions that you can use that can create some unique lists, I'm looking forward to seeing what the options there are for different armies.
Yeah, like if you think it's going to be anything like what 40k has access to, where I've not played a lot of 40k, but my understanding is they aren't beholden to certain formations, are they? I think they can build their list, a very elite list.
Basically, build what you want. Each one's got a specific like troop choice. So like you can have a flyer list or a heavy support list, or
so you could see some cool lists like that. It'll come down to the missions. Ultimately, from a competitive point of view, if you still need to have like battle line units to contribute towards certain objectives, then you're always going to see them in lists anyway.
Yeah.
But at least gives you that choice. And I think it probably will give you more choice than having to take battalions that limit your choice at the list building stage as well, because you've got to take certain tacks. So yeah, like I think it will on the whole be a good thing. I'm looking forward to it just because I played that much of Age of Sigmar 2. Loads of new rules and stuff shakes it up a lot and makes the game a lot more interesting, at least initially.
Oh, 100%. It's perfect time for it to come back as well. Everyone's kind of coming out of lockdowns and a new edition comes out, everyone can just learn the game again and just kind of almost reboot. So I can't wait as well. The new Stormcast that I've seen look lovely.
Oh yeah, no, I'm definitely picking up that box. So that might dictate, depending on what the other faction is, what I do for my last army of the year. Yeah. I'm keen to do Stormcast because I've never done them, but that new model with the javelin thing, or is it sword or javelin with the wings?
The Celestial Spear, yeah.
Yeah, so cool.
That's the kind of standard that they're going for the new Stormcast. Yeah. I can't wait. It's going to be amazing. But apart from that, I think we'll get out of here.
Yep.
Is there anything you want to kind of shout out to or promote before we sign off?
I'd be remiss of me to not plug Northern Invasion. Stu West's got a YouTube channel, Northern Invasion, and we do a podcast semi-regularly. I think it'll be kicking off soon. A bit more regular once the tournament scene starts. We just kind of cover what we've been doing and then also the Northern Masters kind of tournament scene.
Yeah.
And JP's Listbot. I don't know if you've spoken to JP about getting him on. He's been whoring himself out to everybody.
But, it's on my list to do. I've even got like a list of questions to ask him, so I need to give him a shout and get him on at some point.
He is honestly the best person for podcasters to get in because he is so dedicated to Listbot that every time he gets interviewed by somebody else, he's working on something new. So everybody gets something new. But no, I think what he's doing with Listbot has potential to be really, really cool going forward with the game. So yeah, check him out as well.
Excellent. And if they want to catch you on Twitter?
Twitter, yes. Oh God, what is my Twitter? I think it's Nate _Watson89. I'll just double check. Nate _Watson89 on Twitter. You can catch me there.
And I'm at Tales of War Games on Twitter, and we've also got the Tales of War Games YouTube channel. But Nathan, thank you ever so much for coming on. It's much appreciated.
Well, welcome.
I owe you a beer the next Scottish event. Lost in the Damned, probably?
Probably, yeah, I'll be there.
Excellent. I'll see you there then. But until then, take care, and we'll see you soon.
You too. Bye-bye.